Hey guys, I'm Tim, and this is my brother James. And this video is for absolute beginners to Dungeons & Dragons. There are a lot of videos that cover these kinds of things, but this one's going to be really different. A lot of videos assume a basic understanding of the game, and they build on top of that.
Or of RPGs in general, tabletop
Right.
role-playing games in general. You know, we're going to cover all of it.
This is the absolute primer. If you have no idea how to play, or if you're really looking to learn how to play, this is where you need to start, and we're going to jump into that right now, so stay tuned. All right. So, you want to play Dungeons & Dragons. That sounds like a cheesy intro. So you want to play D&D. But here's the thing. Whenever I try to jump into something, whether it's like music production or like any of the things that I've tried to self-teach myself, self-taught, I don't know, any of the things I'm self-taught in.
Not English. He didn't self-teach English.
Improve me English so goods.
Not sure which joke I want to go with here.
But whenever I've tried to dig into something,
Learn something new. How about we say
there we
that?
go. Whenever
Learn
I've tried to
something
learn
new.
something new, especially using YouTube videos, I feel like I'm a little on the outskirts. Like I missed the first class. Like
Yeah, you missed the 101. This is the 102.
yeah, and I'm like, this is the 000. This is the absolute, like, what the heck is all this about? What is this Dungeons & Dragons? How do I play? What do I need? And all that stuff. But this is going to be the bedrock and the pillars. Here's the first thing that's super important to know. And I wish somebody would have told me this.
Yeah.
There's no wrong way to do it. There's absolutely 100% no wrong way to do it. However, when people do tell me that, I'm like, okay, but how do you do it?
Exactly. You still want something to go off of because you have no idea.
Right. I don't like it when people say there's no wrong way, do it however you want. And I'm like, yeah, but I need a way to do it. So
like in a sentence, how would you describe a tabletop role-playing game?
tabletop role-playing is telling a story collaboratively with other people. That's it. Here's what I mean. Well, what are you talking about? Let me let you in on this secret. You've played tabletop RPGs before. You just may not have done it in a more structured way. It's like playing pretend when you were a kid, just with some rules that
Or an adult. Adults can play pretend too.
or an adult. But one of our really good friends, Barker, from Be a Better Game Master, another YouTube channel, he used this analogy, and it's so good. And it's that he and his buddy played baseball in their front yard when he was growing up. And that's it. Just front yard ball, you know? He, Barker, never really went beyond that. But his friend then played, I think, eventually he played in the minor leagues, but he went through some different iterations of that. And it's like, that spirit of playing front yard ball is kind of the spirit of playing a tabletop RPG. It's like, until you know that there are more rules out there, you kind of just go with it. When you're playing pretend as a kid, or when you're playing football in the yard, or you're playing pickup basketball with a hoop in the street,
Yeah.
the rules only matter for that particular street corner. Like, oh, when it goes past this car, it's out. You know, it's like...
Yeah, the rules of most tabletop role-playing games are there to give you an idea of what you can do, but they are almost never, I would even say never there to stop you from doing what you want to do.
Exactly.
So we call them rules because they're rules, but it's better to call them guidelines because they're not... A lot of rules of role-playing games, just about every role-playing game has a rule that says you should break the rules if it makes it more fun, more interesting,
Exactly.
or is something that you're interested in trying.
So this video specifically talks about D&D, or Dungeons & Dragons, and like, you know, the basics and how to play. The reason why is because that's the most popular tabletop RPG. It's the one that everyone kind of asks about. It's in culture.
The most popular as far as sales.
Sure.
Basically. It's the most well-known.
Most well-known. So it's the one we're talking about because we can tell you that there are a ton of other ones that have slightly different rule structures, but D&D is the most popular. It's one of the most well-known, like you said. Here's the most important thing. All that aside, here's how you play Dungeons & Dragons, and here's how a basic bedrock understanding of the game can work. James, you arrive at a park. You walk up, and there are some people playing basketball. One of the people playing basketball goes to shoot a hoop, but they miss. The ball falls and rolls to your feet. What do you do?
I pick up the ball and I sort of maybe walk a little closer and throw it back to them, trying to help their game get back on track.
That's it. As crazy as that sounds, that's really what tabletop RPGs or D&D is all about. We just told a collaborative story. I just kind of came up with the what if, and then he said what he would do next. And there are more things that are to it, but that's the most fundamental thing that I wish somebody would have told me from the beginning.
Like, yeah, that's it. It's not a nebulous idea. Some people, they, like you said, they assume a little too much, and they never tell you that at the heart of it, it's just telling a story. That's it. Role-playing games are telling a story.
And so there are rules to govern those things, and there are books that have like, okay, well, how fast can he throw that ball? How good is he at sports? And there are rules, and you can put those on a character sheet. And we're going to get into all that stuff later, but the most important thing to know is it's just storytelling. So theoretically, you don't need dice. You don't need any books. You just need to do that thing you do when you're hanging out with your friends and you say, hey, what if this happened? Hey, you know what would be cool? If this happened.
If the Hulk fought Superman.
What would happen? And then, in a tabletop RPG, I'd say, all right, I'll pretend I'm the Hulk and you pretend you're Superman. Now, you might be thinking, dude, that's weird. You kind of got to let go. Listen, I know it can seem kind of weird and people are like, well, and you seem a little embarrassed, but don't be. Because inherently, most people just super love telling stories.
Yeah, and especially if you get to, like, in RPGs, you can create your own characters or play people you know, but if you start out playing Superman, if he's your favorite superhero, I'm like, well, yeah, let go. I mean,
exactly.
What would Superman do?
And if you feel a little weird about that, then just say you control Superman and I control the Hulk. So if I did that, I'd say, all right, here's the thing. I control the Hulk. I'm going to ignore you. I'm actually going to save Betty Ross. So I'm jumping. I'm leaping. But as I'm doing that, I'm crushing buildings, and I don't even know it. What do you do?
And so I'm controlling Superman. So what I would do is I would, fly. I'd try and sort of, I would make Superman try and intercept you midair, so that you don't, crush any more buildings. Exactly.
And you're just telling a story, and that might feel weird. Like, wait, hold on, are these guys on the level? Isn't there way more to it?
No, not really.
There can be. But there doesn't have to be.
There are different ways to do it. Again, there's no way to do it wrong. So a lot of what we like to do on this channel is tell you cool ways to change up the game or cool ways that we like to do it to, again, give you that baseline of there's no wrong way, but here's what we found is pretty cool. But like you said, that's the basis of it.
Exactly. So there are a couple other quick core concepts that we want to make sure to introduce so that you have a little more of a
a clear picture.
Yeah, like an overall understanding. There are a lot of different rules in a lot of different games that would handle Superman versus the Hulk very differently. And those basically are usually called mechanics or rule systems or additions. Like there's a lot of different real words for them, but truly all it is different ways to govern the challenges that might come up as Superman tries to intercept the Hulk.
Exactly. I would say this is where we begin to depart from that childhood playing, because if we were both kids, it would quickly devolve into, nuh-uh, I'm stronger than the Hulk.
Well, no, because I do this, and no, I punch you before you hit me.
But no, I'm invincible. So that is the moment where sort of the tabletop role-playing games come into the picture and say, well, okay, here's how we're going to try and figure out what happens.
Exactly. So I want you to think of it this way. When you hear the word addition or rule set or mechanics
or system
is the best one that I should have mentioned first. Okay. Take the core concept from up here and you kind of mash it together. And then you put it through the pasta strainer. And there are different pasta strainers for your system. That's going to put different shapes and sizes of how that scenario can come out the other side.
All right. You saved that analogy in the end.
Okay.
Another good way to put it, to just beat the dead horse that is this analogy.
You got to cook the pasta. No,
you got to cook the pasta and then make sure you boil it first. Okay. The way I like to describe it is a car gets you from one place to another. It can do so quickly. It can do so safely. It can do so if you're high in the air, if you're low, if it's a truck or if it's a small one. No matter what car you get into, it has four wheels. Well, that's not true. It has wheels. It's going to drive, and it gets you from one place to another. But if you like a Lamborghini more than you like a Porsche, well, that's up to you. You play the Porsche game rather than the Lamborghini game.
Exactly.
You're still driving.
And so the idea here is that's one core concept we want to talk about. Rule systems govern what happens in the scenario. And they lay out, okay, well, here's how fast Superman can move. And here's how hard he is to hit in this world versus the Hulk, etc. So the other core concept we want to hit on, there's two more, but this next one is, well, isn't that going to be chaotic?
Yeah.
If we're both just going back and forth saying what happens, how do we know what's really going to happen? It's just going to devolve into chaos eventually. Well, the game system has developed something called a game master, or in Dungeons & Dragons, a dungeon master. And their job is to prepare the challenges. They think up the story that the other players are going to play in. So in the example before, I was the dungeon master. I said, we're going to have that start in a park. James's character is going to walk up in a park. And it's just whatever I feel like. Now, the other players still should have a say in what's going on, and we'll get into that in later videos, but really, it's just like the dungeon master or the game master is like a referee.
Yeah.
So, that referee decides what happens when a rules call needs to be made, or when James says, well, Superman is going to intercept the Hulk. That game master or dungeon master then decides, all right, well, we're going to use these rules to adjudicate that particular challenge.
The game master in that situation would also be the one who decides how far away Betty Ross is.
Right, when the Hulk's trying to get there.
He says, oh, I'm getting there. Even if Betty Ross was never in the picture before, it's up to the game master to say, okay, well, you started in this spot, so based on where you are, she's probably at home. Maybe it's a couple city blocks.
There you go. So the final thing that we'll really hit on, that's kind of a major pillar when you're seeing people play Dungeons and Dragons and you see these papers with all these stats and rules on them, is dice. So you can play tabletop RPGs without dice. I mean, we've done it a couple times in this video where we just kind of talk it out and just kind of roll with it.
Exactly.
Dice are a way to incorporate chance into the scenarios. So in combination with the rules, using the dice is basically so there's an element of, well, what if I fail?
Yeah. It's the best way that a lot of there are a lot of different styles, but with dice, for me, I like it because I love deciding what I'm going to do. I'm Superman, I'm going to try and intercept the Hulk, and I roll a die, depending on what game system you're playing, to decide how well I do that. And to me, I like that because I don't like deciding if I succeeded or failed or not, because it almost seems unfair. That's when the sort of childhood, well, no, I hit you first,
I hit,
I
you hit. No, I did this.
The dice kind of just make little decisions for you, and then you can go off of that.
Exactly. And we'll get into that in later videos, but just to give you a core understanding, in a lot of game systems, the rules give you sort of ways to use the dice and then incorporate it with some mechanics or rules so that you're better at certain things.
Yeah.
So if Superman were to roll a dice to do one thing, and the Hulk were to roll a dice to do the same thing, there are going to be things that Superman is better at, and there are going to be things that the Hulk is better at. And the rules typically dictate that. But that's what the dice are. It's just adding an element of chance so that it's not just down to everyone takes turns saying what happened, to keep the game a little more fair.
Exactly.
So I want to give everybody a scenario that you can use to play a tabletop RPG while you're watching this video. Now, here, this is crazy. I want you to think, what's something you've always wanted to do? You want to climb Everest? You want to take cooking classes? Even if you want to pay off your house. Those are challenges. Now, you're that person. And I'm going to turn to James here, put him on the super spot. What's something you want to do?
I want to come up with 3 better examples for...
So go ahead, come up with 3 better examples. I'm just trying to use real world things.
No. You did it right. I was just, I want to make a joke is what I should have said.
It's ruining the videos.
He is. So something I want to do. I want to go eat something later. I'm getting kind of hungry. We're going to finish up making videos soon, and later I want to drive to probably a restaurant and eat something.
As simple as that sounds. And he's not wrong. Those were pretty goofball examples I used, but I'm trying to keep it super mundane and things that almost anyone can relate with. Something that simple. James wants to go, and he wants to drive and get something to eat. I'm the game master. I can come up with a couple of different problems or challenges for James. What if his car doesn't start?
That was the first one I thought.
So, James, your car doesn't start. What are you going to do?
So, if I go outside, my car doesn't start, I think, all right, well, I've got a few options. One is I can find Cassie, my fiance, and say, hey, I'm really hungry and my car's not starting. Can I borrow your car or do you want to come with me? Another thing I can do is I can say, hey, I'm going to just order pizza from Domino's. So of those two, I'm like, all right, you know what? I kind of don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to deal with my car. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call Domino's and I'm going to order a pizza.
So there you go. So now his character chooses like, all right, I'm going to order a pizza. So now me as the game master, what I'll say is, all right, so you dial the phone. It's ringing. And someone picks up and they sound very irate. And they go, thanks for calling Domino's. What do you want?
And I would say, how's it going? You know, I'm looking to order a couple pizzas for tonight for delivery.
Yeah, I know who this is. You're the guy that never tips our drivers. We don't like you.
Well, hey, what are you talking about? No, I always give a tip. I'm even when I have Cassie answer the door, I make sure she gives a tip. I think you got the wrong guy.
All right, well, here's what I'm going to do. I want you to give me your pizza order, and I'm going to come down there myself, and you're going to prove it to me.
Okay. Can I talk to your manager?
And there you go. So as...
No, really, I want to talk to this guy's manager. I'm not letting that go.
Exactly. So here's the thing. What I've done is I have let James decide something that he wanted. And then I put some obstacles in the way of what he wanted. And then he just says, well, I want to try this, and I want to try this. And then I kind of just go back and forth with him, and we tell a story together. That's it. That's the core. You can use a rule system to kind of say, oh, okay, well, you have this ability to convince me to be nicer to you. Use that ability. And you can use dice. I can say, you know what? Why don't you roll the dice? And the higher you get, the better you're going to convince this guy to be nice to you.
And another sort of, to put the cherry on top of all of that, so far we've touched on Superman and the Hulk was probably the closest we really got to tabletop RPGs. I've never personally played one where I role-played myself. That's just real life. So the idea is, as well as systems and all this other stuff we talked about, it's completely up to you, the GM and your players or whatever, your group, to decide where you're going to do this. You know, and the sky is the limit. We use the example of you could literally play a role-playing game where you call the pizza guy and try to order a pizza and he's mean.
Right, but that's not a very common one.
You can play superheroes. That's relatively common, but usually people make their own superheroes. You know, there are rules for deciding what your powers are and stuff in certain systems. D&D, the game we're going to be mostly focusing on, is fantasy. So you're sort of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones style. You know, there are different styles of fantasy, but that sort of medieval, usually there are dragons, usually there's magic, stuff like that. And you play a character there, but it's the same concept. You know, instead of ordering a pizza, I go down to the inn and order some mutton. And they say, oh, well, we're all out of mutton. And I ask them, well, where'd all the mutton go?
Right.
Like, oh, well, you know, we've been having these strange attacks. There are large bite marks in some of the animals, and you know, we're just running out of food. I can serve you some grain because we had a good harvest, but, you know, really, actually, I see you're wearing a sword. Is there any way you can maybe help us out with this problem?
Right. And that's getting more into like what a lot of fantasy RPGs are all about. And so I said, hey, well, you know, I'm going to make it so that you can play right now. You can do an RPG. You could do an RPG. You could do an RPG. I don't know if you want to make some RPG pasta. You got to boil it. Here is how you can do that. I want you to think of a character. It can be a fictional character. It can be your favorite TV show hero. It can be your favorite TV show villain. It could be a real-life person from history. Think of one character, one person, okay? You are now that character, okay? So think about it. Take a second. They just kind of think, okay, visualize what they look like and so on. All right, that's who you are. All right. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think of something that is deadly or a problem or a challenge for that character. Okay? And from there, I want you to post in the comments the character, and then I want you to post the thing that they're up against.
The challenge.
The challenge. And then James and I will try to comment back as often as we can and kind of run you through, okay, here's what happens. What do you do? And give you some actual real-world practice in the YouTube comments. Or if you're listening on Podbean, you can do it on the Podbean comments or wherever you're listening. But the idea is, that's it. It's just going back and forth and telling a story. So comment below who you are and what challenge you're facing, and let's teach you how to do this thing. Does that all make sense? Did I miss anything? Should I...
No, I think that's pretty good. Another way to do this, to sort of sneaky do this, if you want to get a friend into tabletop role-playing games, but they refuse to watch this video because we are dumb faces, a good way to do it is
or they think it's weird, or they're like, that's stupid, I don't like that idea.
Those are better examples. If you go to a friend of yours and say, hey, so if you were, Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones, right? And this is something that's never happened to him. I was thinking of Game of Thrones. I'm like, all right, so if you were Jaime Lannister and you came up against somebody that just kept, you're in a tavern and they keep sort of pushing you. They keep like they know who you are and they know you're their best swordsman and they're trying to get you to fight. What do? Well, your friend might say, oh, well, I'm gonna face him. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tell him, well, no, definitely I'll duel you. Like, well, you just tricked your friend into playing a tabletop role-playing game with you.
That's it. Here are another few. All right. You are your favorite Harry Potter character. Let's say it's Harry Potter. Voldemort has returned, and you are face-to-face with him. What do? Well, I'm going to use it. You're playing a tabletop RPG. Right there. You're playing a role-playing game.
You're surfing. You're out there with your friends, and you just, gnashed a big wave. What's that phrase?
You gnashed a hot wave.
You gnashed a hot wave, bro. We're trying to get in the spirit. And, you come out of this sick tunnel. I don't surf, so I don't know any words. But you're surfing, and you're having a good time, and you look over to see if your friend saw it, and you see the fin of a shark near one of your best friends, probably 20 feet away from you. What do?
That's it.
That's tabletop role-playing games.
That's it. So you can introduce systems, you can introduce dice, but at its core, it's just telling a story with other people. So this has been part 1, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So this has been the first episode of D&D Basics, where we talk about tabletop RPGs for absolute beginners. If you have any questions, comment on this video, because other people have these same questions. Our channel, our YouTube channel, we have, quite a few videos, but none of them are really geared towards you, that person who's just interested in getting into D&D or another tabletop RPG for the first time.
Or, you hear your friend talking about it and you wonder, what is that? And you don't want to ask him, or you've looked it up a few times, but all you can find are talk about which edition is the best or which system does this the best.
Right, and we're going to get into all that in good time. But one of the things, and I said this in the beginning of the video, and I will never stop saying it, one of the biggest things that frustrates me when I'm trying to learn something is when I feel like they've skipped the core fundamental 101, just basic stuff. And hopefully this video hit all of that for you. Hopefully now you understand what people are doing. And when they're sitting at a table and say, oh, I'm going to play D&D, or even some people that play online, they're just telling a story together, governed by some rules, with a game master who's refereeing the thing, roughly, and they're rolling some dice, or maybe not. But at the end of the day, you can do it. You can do it right now. There's no wrong way to do it. And you might start out and it's going to feel weird, or you might start out and it'll feel totally naturally to you. It doesn't matter. Just don't be afraid to do it. And make sure you subscribe to see more of these videos. Another thing, steep yourself in our other videos. They might not make a lick of sense. But when I was learning like audio engineering, I just would put on videos and be like, what?
Yeah, you kind of watch it and, eventually 2-3 videos in and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is all kind of beginning to make sense. I kind of know what they're talking about there.
it's that like osmosis almost.
And it's the main thing that stuff like that does is it'll give you a good insight into certain little things that we'll mention, about, when you're talking, do this, or when you're playing your character, do that. And you kind of will get little pieces here and there. So some people do it like that.
Exactly.
Because there's no wrong way to do it, but I like to sort of expand that and say, but we'll tell you how we like to do it.
Totally. And so we will get into, you might be thinking, well, are you going to show actually playing? Yeah, we'll eventually get to that. But, we want to make it so that people who have never played can jump in right here and say, okay, tell me from scratch. I didn't grow up with this stuff. I have never really played. I don't know anybody that plays. What are we doing here? Most people think it's a board game.
Yeah.
And that there's, these intricate... most people's understanding who have never played is pretty far off.
Yeah. Some people just don't have a very good idea. It's kind of like me in cricket. I don't know how cricket works.
Yeah.
I kind of know that it's a sport, and I know what the bat looks like from watching Ninja Turtles.
I was just going to say, the first Ninja Turtles.
Sometimes.
Cricket!
So, like this video, subscribe if you want to continue watching this series. Get updates when we update it. And like Tim said earlier, comment with questions or, of course, your role-play scenario for us to respond to. But especially if you have questions, let us know, because that will sort of color some of the videos we do in the future, and we'll make sure to cover things that maybe a lot of people are asking, or because we know what it is. So we're going back to the core, but we don't want to miss anything that you might be curious about. No matter how simple or really simple you think it is, let us know, and we'll cover it in future videos.
Totally. And we're in this one for the long game, meaning this is going to be incredibly incremental. We've searched high and low, and we haven't found any kind of video series that covers it this in-depth from scratch. So be patient, stick with us. And even if you know some of these things, and even if you do have experience, sometimes going back to the fundamentals is one of the best ways to relearn or rethink something that maybe you've known for a long time, but get these minor revelations of new ways to do things.
Exactly. So like I said, subscribe. We'll have another one of these pretty soon for you guys, so we can keep learning tabletop RPGs. But I'd say until then, our regular sign-off doesn't really work here.
Until next time, may your dice roll high. But for you, until next time...
Until the first time you play, when the first time you play is, we hope that you roll well and do good stuff. We're workshopping that one a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next time.
Tabletop Terrors.com. Subscribe to our channel.